Good evening. Night walkers, tonight we walk the kind of trails where routine becomes camouflage and sound arrives before faces do. If you've ever trusted fog to be just weather, or arrows to be honest, or silence to mean safety, these 7 quiet miles will change the way you breathe. Keep a light on, keep your steps sure, and if something whistles when you stop, don't. This is Untold Scary Truths. Story 1. The 4-note whistle. I told myself it was only weather when the fog rolled in like soft walls. But the woods felt arranged the moment the 4-note whistle answered my first pause. I was 24, field notebook open to a page on shelf fungi, and every time I crouched or lifted the camera, that same little tune rose and fell as if it had learned my timing. Fog eats distance, so I tested it. I walked fast until my calves stung. Ducked behind a maple, cut my breathing to a count of 4. And when I froze, the whistle arrived right on cue. Closer, confident, like a finger tapping glass. The trail climbed into a hollow where wet leaves sucked at my boots, and the air went dense and woolen. And then a single boot crunch offset from mine told me this was an echo. I called out hello and heard the word die an arm's length from my mouth. And somewhere to my left, a man's steady breath, so I did what prey does. I moved. I didn't run, because running makes a shape in fog. And for a minute, I pretended I was still a student taking notes. Until the side path ripped open, and a man in a grimy jacket stepped out with his hand extended far too fast. A lunge, not a greeting. I stumbled, half fell, and luck strangers materialized uphill. 3 silhouettes tightening into a human wall. And the man stopped so cleanly, it was like someone pressed pause. He smiled, as if we'd been playing an agreed-upon game, then disappeared into the smoke of weather. The rangers said they knew him, said last time was the same pattern, said the whistle only comes when you stop, as if the rule was physics. Afterwards, maps of complaints blurred into a field of dots. A song you could draw across a county, and even with a statement filed and a name inked on paper. Fear arrived in a simpler form. Now the woods contain an instrument I can't unhear. The next time I went out, I learned a new skill, not how to read bark or spores, but how to keep moving when every cell in your body begs you to stop and listen for the thing that wants you to. Story 2. Rufus and the follower. Morning on Red Rock is a kind of prayer leash jingling, coffee steam. My dog Rufus grinning at the entire world, so when the stranger in the faded ball cap said, "Morning," Rufus like he was finishing my sentence for me. Something small and warm inside me broke with a sound only I could hear. I hadn't said my dog's name, hadn't posted a story, hadn't done anything except live the routine I'd taught the internet to expect. And he recited it back with an intimacy that felt like he'd been there. Not on a screen, but behind my shoulder. You start around 8, you go clockwise on Tuesdays. You bought that red pack last summer. The way he smiled while he walked beside us on the narrow trail made the rocks feel like walls, and my own knowledge of the ground feels suddenly useless. Every time I slowed to let him pass, he matched. Every time I pretended to tie a boot, he waited, watching with the patience of someone who believes proximity is permission. I tried to keep my voice level, to say please leave me alone, to let it be awkward instead of dangerous. And he said he wasn't here to hurt me, only to finally say hi, as if comments had ripened into a right. When the ranger's green jacket appeared down trail, it was like a door opening. And the man showed his real shape only in the moment before witnesses mattered. He leaned close enough for me to smell coffee on his breath and said, "Soft as a promise, don't think deleting changes anything." I deleted anyway that night. Years of photos of my dog's joy evaporating in a quiet that felt like cutting off a limb, and I changed what time I go, what direction I take, what I wear, and which part of my brain stays on high alert even when the light is beautiful. I still walk, because walking is the only thing that steadies my hands after a day at the clinic. But now the trail is 2 paths layered over each other, the one my feet know, and the one the internet built for a stranger to find me on. And somewhere between them, I'm learning how to exist without telling the entire world where my shadow will be. Story 3, Wrong Arrows Guiding, is mostly the art of keeping other people from making the kind of mistake that looks like a shortcut. So I noticed the first lie the way a mason hears bad stone. The arrow at the fork rotated to point down a faint spur that had no business inviting boots. We took the left we were supposed to, and 20 minutes later, a brand new reflective sticker suggested the same wrong turn under a coat of plausible intention. Cairns appeared in a neat little runway toward a notch I knew ended in air, and I kicked them down with the same calm I used to check a map. The land doesn't lie, people do. Still, by early afternoon the sum of the tampering felt like a mind pressing on ours. And at a sun-bleached bend, a brushed-over tread tried to erase the correct descent while a manicured smear of dust led cleanly to the cliff lip when the photographer drifted that way for a better angle. I caught his shoulder and the world dropped off in the kind of silence that teaches humility faster than any lecture. 10 paces into the trees, a smell of damp canvas threaded through the alpine air. And tucked behind firs sat a low tent with no permit tag. Inside it a neat inventory of vandalism, orange flagging, rolls of arrow stickers, spray paint, blank posts, a little workshop for rewriting reality, just enough to push strangers where gravity would finish the sentence. We packed out the cash with the rangers and logged coordinates, and over the next week reports came in from 2 drainages over same bright lies, same brushed out safety no faces, just to practice. Afterwards, I walked that ridge differently, feeling for the true line like a pulse, listening to wind direction, reading rock the way you read someone's mouth when their words don't match their eyes. Every sign became a suggestion to verify, every neat stack of stones an audition for trust. And when a figure shadowed us from the tree line once, always just far enough to be a hiker, I understood their pleasure wasn't in watching anyone fall but in watching us question the ground itself. I brought my clients home anyway, because that's the job. Herd 6 hearts through a place built to punish certainty, and at the trailhead, I told them the only thing worth remembering: never outsource your sense of north to something that can be peeled up and stuck down by a stranger's hand. Story 4, What the Water Bars Keep the Smokies Teach Patience with a Shovel. You move mud so that water remembers where to go, and the morning my tool rang instead of thudded, I felt the note reverberate through my wrists before my eyes made sense of the orange-brown metal surfacing from the trench. It wasn't dropped, it was driven blade down and tamped like someone had planted a flag they wanted the rain to keep. The ranger who came up handled it with tweezers, bagged a strip of cloth we'd missed stained a color old blood dries into, and said the sentence that made the woods larger and smaller at once: "You'd be surprised how often this happens." We went back to clearing silt, because that's what you do when a hillside will fail without you. But the trench kept replaying in my head like a bad dream with perfect sound design. And when I hiked back alone the next day, it was just dirt again, water moving beautifully, as if the ground had swallowed the narrative the way a body takes back heat. I started carrying a ribbon of surveyor's tape to mark anything that didn't feel like weather: an old corroded battery in a cut, a child's glitter backpack under a stump with a fossilized applesauce pouch, and a name in marker. Jules and the same ranger came for that one too, with a tired accuracy that told me she hadn't been dramatic. Most of it is nothing, some of it isn't. We do what we can. I used to think trails were just corridors of effort, connecting views. But after that summer I understood they're also ledgers. And under the foot-friendly tread is a palimpsest of panic and accident, and sometimes intention. Now every time my shovel hits something that isn't root or rock, I pause long enough to hear if the echo is metals or memories. And I work slower, not because the job changed, but because the ground is telling a story I can't pretend isn't there. We fix the leak, the hillside holds, hikers pass, and under all that ordinary goodness lies a quiet, bagged and labeled reminder that people leave more in the woods than orange peels and boot prints. Story 5, Overwatch. I told myself the drone was scenery, a kid's sky toy hunting vistas, until it learned my cadence and matched it, a gleam above the pines that slid when I slid and hovered when I drank water. The whine a little higher than bees and steadier than cicadas, a tone built to live in the bones. Pisgah is generous if you treat it like a place and not a picture. So I made camp near a thread of water and boiled noodles while the woods threaded my tent with creek talk and leaf sighs. And then, long after I killed the lantern, steps began lighting up the fabric, circling, slow, careful in the way only a human can be when they're counting your fear. The trick with terror is that it makes you an instrument you don't know how to play. I lay still, hand on the multi-tool I'd never used for anything but prying a can. And I waited for whatever came next, which turned out to be nothing and everything. Morning. Outside, my gear had been handled as if to prove proximity, pot overturned, food bag unzipped, socks damp with dew a few feet off, and a single thing missing. My small power bank, the only object that would turn the night's recordings into absence. Back in town, I typed what I didn't want to type: drone following hikers, Pisgah, and read my own night aloud in strangers' posts, boot prints at tent doors, camo on the tree line, footsteps you can set your pulse to, and always the sense that someone used the drone to select a human rather than a view. The rangers have to balance between paranoia and public calm, so the answers were soft, but the feeling wasn't. I hike with friends now, with eyes up and routes chosen like secrets, and still, in a city park on a Sunday, a toy whirred over a fountain, and my chest locked as if the woods had followed me home. I don't know if the person out there wants phones or fear or both, only that their favorite position is above, where you look up and squint and never see a face, only a silhouette where the sun should be. I used to think power meant battery percentage, and then I learned it also means who gets to decide when you sleep. If a sound from tonight followed you into the room, the four-note whistle, the collar's jingle, the clean ping of buried metal, or the insect-thin buzz that isn't, tell me which one. This is Untold Scary Truths, where small towns and big landscapes teach the same lesson. Quiet isn't safety, it's opportunity. Subscribe, ring the bell so the next shadow doesn't slip past you, and share this with the one friend who thinks the wilderness is empty, because it isn't, and neither are we.